Hi, Ketchup
Hi,
Crew.
hi, Ketchup Crew.
Hi,
Hi,
Crew.
Trish.
I was the
Okay,
Ketchup
so
Crew. I enjoyed
Ketchup,
your chats.
so Ketchup Crew, to catch you up on our chat so far, Carmen has an exciting new job. Jenny is finally allowed to get sick and is unfortunately allowed to be.
And is still a doctor.
Yeah, and it's
And I'm
still
still a doctor. Doctors get sick too, yo.
It's
Yeah.
true.
And I'm gonna get my certificate soon as well.
Ooh.
So it's official. And I'm still drinking wine out of the bottle for this.
It's important.
Well, it's alcohol-free wine, so I don't feel too bad about it. Basically,
reasonable.
grape juice.
grape juice that isn't full of sugar.
Yeah. They added a little bit of the sugar back, but not all of it. So it's low carb grape juice.
Mm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Something that I miss from Luxembourg that really isn't that common here is like getting grape juice made from the wine grapes. It hasn't been fermented at all. It's just like the local wine grapes juiced, and they're really good. It's way better than like normal grape juice. It's usually like much drier and
We get
That
it
sounds lovely.
in I think we have it here too. It's called New Wine here. So it's just
Really?
untreated grape juice basically that will ferment eventually if you leave it long enough. But
fair.
so nice as well.
Yeah, new wine in Luxembourg is something, it's already fermented. It's just like, it's often just still slightly a little bit bubbly from being like a really young ferment. But yeah.
Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's not grape juice after all. But I was allowed to drink it as a kid, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah, new wines that I know are like, they're definitely alcoholic. You wouldn't give them to a kid. I mean, okay, my mom gave me wine at the dinner table when I was a kid, but just like a thimbleful and that kind of thing. You wouldn't like be like, here, have a whole glass of it.
I mean, Passover and special occasion.
Yeah.
Tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
New Year's.
Yeah.
Yeah, though I remember the
So
first
that it
time
wasn't a
someone gave
taboo
me,
when you were a teenager.
I had a tiny sip of champagne quite young. I think it was one of my sisters had snuck it to me in hopes that no one would notice because I really wanted some. And I was like, ugh, why do you drink this?
I was like that too. I was like, ew, gross.
Like it's
I
dry.
had
it
Rotting
doesn't taste like
grapes,
fruit.
ew.
I had a friend who, as a kid, really, really enjoyed this cake that had basically eggnog on top of it. You just poured eggnog over it as like a.
Which is alcoholic over here.
Yeah, it is. It is too in Germany.
It's not in Canada.
Huh?
It's not in Canada. That I was explaining for Lyric, because
Thank you.
eggnog
I
is
didn't
like
realize that.
a kid's favorite drink in Canada, but it's also non-alcoholic.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
No,
it's like very eggy.
well, yeah.
Definitely no alcohol. Some
And
people add rum to it, but like most people don't.
Would I potentially like eggnog if I tried British eggnog if I don't like Canadian eggnog?
Yeah, it's really different. I still don't like it.
Okay, that's
I'm not a fan of the egg drinks, and that German, the one that you get in Christmas markets that's yellow and eggy. It's not quite eggnog. It's too eggy.
yeah. I think it might
But
be
if
the
you
egginess
like,
I find off-putting. Maybe that's just it.
to me, the alcohol makes it worse. I kind of like the non-alcoholic version better. Like I don't really like the egginess, and then I don't really like I think I don't know. I don't know. It's okay, but I'm not sure you'd like it better if you don't already like eggnog.
Yeah.
In Germany, we sometimes have some that's basically like alcoholic vanilla pudding. And
Yeah.
it's like
It's really thick.
I really like it.
I mean,
Okay,
vanilla
then I will
pudding
take
with alcohol sounds better.
Huh?
Vanilla pudding with alcohol sounds better. Like more
Yeah.
appealing description wise.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah.
it is. It's story time. Are you sitting comfortably?
Don't forget to mute yourselves.
View. Then I'll begin. Hero of the world. Heracles often thought of Atlas. Atlas, lonely, aloft, holding up the cosmos, like a boy with a ball. Heracles never visited Atlas again. Some combination of shame and fear kept him away. He had cheated to win, he knew that. But how could he blame himself? Blame Hera. Blame the gods for setting up him impossible tasks, tasks that any other man would have failed. Time faded the insult. The thought wasp hardly stung him at all now. Only sometimes was there that buzzing discontent that made him want to tear his head off and discus it into space. He had other things on his mind now. He was getting a new wife. Deianira was the kind of woman that everybody wanted. She was the daughter of Dionysus. She had all his extravagance. She had a body like a feast, skin as smooth as wine, and an appetite for pleasure. And she could go all night. She was perfect for Heracles. He wooed her in the usual way, with a lot of bragging and a few tricks with his biceps. He promised to take her traveling with him. He needed a wife, and he had no legitimate children left alive. The ones he hadn't killed himself by mistake, others had killed for him. Besides, it was prophesied that if he did not die within the next 15 months, he would live out his days in quiet happiness. It was time to settle down. And this is where I'm going to start paraphrasing. In that shortly after the wedding, Heracles and Deianira are crossing a river, and it's very, very deep. And Heracles is like, I can jump. And Deianira is like, nah. And then a centaur, Nessus, comes up and is like, oh, I can help you. So like Heracles helps Deianira onto the centaur. And of course, Greek mythology, centaur runs off with her. Heracles gets mad, runs after them, shoots the centaur. Centaur, as he's dying, tells Deianira that he's sorry for what he did, kidnapping her, and that if she takes the blood and sweat from him and mixes it onto a piece of fabric that touches Heracles's body, he will be forever faithful to her and only her. And she goes, okay. So she like hides this piece of fabric and takes it home with her, thinking, oh, I probably don't need it, but like, fine. Time passes. Wait. Sorry, got lost. Time passes. There was a king that Heracles was in a war with, and during this war, there was a bet that in which Heracles won the king's eldest daughter as his like war prize. The king went back on this bet, and Heracles was always mad about it. This was from before we met him. But he always considered this eldest daughter to be like his, even though she was never like, they were never married. So he goes through, after being married, he's like, I need to settle down, but I need to settle this last thing. So he sieges her village, kills all her family, and then she, at the end of the siege, after refusing his proposals, well, he kills his family, runs off a building like to commit suicide, and he catches her on her way down, rapes her, and then she's like, oh yeah, I liked that. And then they're lovers. And Deianira is not happy about this. Heracles is like, oh, I'm going to like now I've got a wife and a mistress and it's going to be happily ever after. And Deianira is like, this is not healthy polyamory. So Heracles is like, okay, life is good. I'm going to live. I have a wife and a mistress, and I'm going to have a sacrifice for Zeus. Deianira, my wife, I need my clean shirt. So Deianira puts the liquid that she got from the centaur on his shirt, and sends it to him so that he can be nicely dressed for his sacrifice. And then as he's making the sacrifice, the curse comes true that Heracles can only be killed by a dead enemy, which was all the pre-shadowing in the earlier book of like him ripping his burning shirt off of himself. So he sets the sacrifice on fire, the fire catches him, and he dies. And then Deianira, realizing that she murdered him rather than made him faithful, also kills herself. And Hera, far away, smiled her ironical smile. He had killed himself after all. She knew he would. Woof. Atlas heard of the death of Heracles. It was the last thing he heard from Olympus. No one told him the old gods had vanished or that the world had changed through the pale savior on a dark cross. Time had become meaningless to Atlas. He was in a black hole. He was under the event horizon. He was a singularity. He was alone. The planet Mercury takes only 88 days to orbit the sun, but a single day on Mercury lasts as long as 176 Earth days. A mercurial year is only half a day. Time passes slowly and quickly there. So it was for Atlas, for whom forever and never had become the same thing. He was a part of the galaxy now, part of a celestial city of millions or billions of stars, gas and dust bound together by their gravitational pull. In this vast city, no two clocks kept the same time. It was impossible to make an appointment. While Mercury flew around the sun in days, Saturn took nearly 29 years, and there were other planets now, unknown to the Greeks. Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto made time a watchword for mortals only. A single year on Pluto counted up 248 of the Earths. Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, was in no hurry. Atlas did not know how long he had been there. Then the dog came. She was a good dog, a faithful dog, a trusting dog who loved her master and obeyed him when he put her inside a tiny capsule and strapped her so that she could not move. She was afraid, but she believed him. She was his dog. When the Russians blasted Laika into space in 1957, they knew she wasn't coming back. An automatic hypodermic would poison her after 7 days. She would orbit in her Sputnik until the universe stopped. Then, when they closed the lid on Laika, she trembled and her mouth went dry. There was water in a tube, and she had been taught to drink from it. There was food, too, but she didn't want water and food. She wanted her master, and night, and quiet, and all of this not to be. She was patient. She would have gone to the ends of the earth for her master. Instead, she went into space. Atlas had retreated so far into his mind that he did not notice the strange pod buzzing around him. Then he saw a little face at the thick sealed window. For a moment, his heart leapt. Was it Heracles? Heracles transformed into his own thought, the only one he had ever had, the why question that he had silenced by hitting his head against so many brick walls as he could find. As the pod came round again, Atlas freed one of his hands from his monstrous burden and caught it. It lay there like a lamed insect in his palm. And there was something inside. Atlas cracked the Sputnik and found Laika, strapped down, unable to move, partially bald with fear and covered in sweat and urine and her own feces. With infinite care, Atlas freed the dog and set it down safely on nothing and gave it water to drink. The speck-sized dog in the star-stretched universe licked the giant's hand. At this moment, the needle in the pod moved to inject its victim, but it was too late. Laika was free. Atlas knocked the pod aside, the silly little thing of tin and wires, and Laika crawled unsteadily up his arms until she found a place to sleep, in a hollow of his shoulder, under the wavelength of his hair. Atlas had long ago ceased to feel the weight of the world that he carried, but he felt the skin and bone of this little dog. Now he was carrying something he wanted to keep, and that changed everything. Boundaries. Friday, March 23rd, 2001, 5:49 a.m., Pacific Ocean. The Mir space station came home. The Russians had loved Mir. They kept it up there through hardship and poverty, paying the bills with blustering loans and black market dollars. Since the days of the first Sputnik, the Russians had loved space. It didn't belong to America. It might one day belong to them. It was the same old story: boundaries, desire. When Mir crashed into the Pacific at dawn, she landed history, but the dream escaped. There it is, orbiting the world, gravity free. Free as a dream should be. But what kind of dream? We dream we're free. The Earth's atmosphere extends for about 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Travel upwards just a couple of miles, and you can escape gravity. Here, there is no weight, only a measureless sea of space-time. Here we are, one of 9 planets revolving around a nuclear star in the spiral arm of a minor galaxy. Our sun is 150 million kilometers away. Pluto, the outermost of the 9 planets, lies 6 billion kilometers away from the same sun. This tiny, icy planet of change and death has never been visited, and the Greeks couldn't see any further than Saturn. Saturn, for them, and for astrologers still, was the planet of limitation. This was the so far and no further planet, the warning, the boundary. Now, it seems there are no boundaries. The universe has no center. Every limit can be crossed. Even the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second, is not the speed limit of the universe. If we could warp space, we could break the light barrier. One day we'll do it all. For now, we've landed on the moon and we've sent Beagle 2 to Mars. We know so much more than Mir. We know more about outer space than anyone ever. But all we know is just the start. There are joltings, hesitations, small facts, big gaps. Like all dreams, the details are strange. Atlas would miss Mir. He had been watching it for years. They both watched it. It was television for him and the dog. Laika had told Atlas all about the world he had never seen. Of course, her world stopped in 1957, and it was the Soviet Union, so Atlas thought that everyone now ate beetroot and turnip and shivered in 0 temperatures in concrete apartments. The dog said the Earth was full. Soon its inhabitants would have to live in space. Atlas had gotten used to his own company. He didn't want humans he had never met flying around his face in their tiny pods. He was a prisoner, but he had rights. They had both seen the moon landing in 1969. Atlas assumed that the men wore those ridiculous clothes because it was so cold on Earth these days. He thought of the sun warming his garden and how he had always gone barefoot. Laika assured him that no one went barefoot in Russia. Where is Russia? Said Atlas. Over there, said Laika, wagging her tail. Atlas looked round at the jigsaw of the Earth. The pieces were continually cut and recut, but the picture stayed the same. The diamond blue planet, ice-capped, swirled in space. Nothing was as beautiful. Not fiery Mars or clouded Venus, nor the comets with their tails blown by solar winds. Then Atlas had a strange thought. Why not put it down? Desire. What can I tell you about the choices we make? I choose this story above all others because it's a story I'm struggling to end. Here we are with all the pieces in place and the final moment waiting. I reached this moment not once, many times. I've been reaching it all my life, it seems. I find there is still no resolution. I want to tell the story again. That's why I write fiction, so that I can keep telling the story. I return to problems I can't solve, not because I'm an idiot, but because the real problems can't be solved. The universe is expanding. The more we see, the more we discover there is to see. Always a new beginning, a different end. When I was a kid, my parents were still living in the war. My dad had been in the D-Day landings. My mother was a young woman in 1940. They adopted me late in life. I was raised among gas masks and rationing. They never understood that the war was over. They remained suspicious of strangers and kept themselves closed off in the personal air raid shelter they called home. My mother had a wartime revolver she hid in the duster drawer, and 6 bullets waxily embedded in a tin of furniture polish. When things were bad, she took the gun out and the polish and left them on the sideboard. It was sufficient. On revolver nights, I crept to bed and switched up on my light-up universe. I used to travel it country by country, some real, others imagined, remaking the atlas as I went. My journeys were matters of survival, crossing nights of misery into days of hope. Keeping the light on was keeping the world going. It was a private vigil, sacred to stop things falling apart. Her, me, the life I knew, however impossible, the only one. Looking at the glowing globe, I thought that if I could only keep on telling the story, if the story would not end, I could invent my way out of the world. As a character in my own fiction, I had a chance to escape the facts. There are 2 facts that all children need to disprove sooner or later: mother and father. If you go on believing in the fiction of your own parents, it is difficult to construct any narrative of your own. In a way, I was lucky. I could not allow my parents to be the facts of my life. Their vision of the story was one I could read, but not write. I had to tell the story again. I'm not a Freudian. I don't believe I can mine the strata of the past and drill out the fault lines. There has been too much weathering: ice ages, glacial erosion, meteor impact, plant life, dinosaurs. The strata of sedimentary rock are like the pages of a book, each with a record of contemporary life written on it. Unfortunately, the record is far from complete. My mother said we all have our crosses to bear. She parades hers like a medieval martyr, notched, gouged, bleeding. She believed in Christ, but not in his cross-bearing qualities. She seemed to forget that he had borne the cross so that we don't have to. Is life a gift or a burden? What is it that you contain? The dead, time, light patterns of millennia opening in your gut. Your first parent was a star. I know nothing of my biological parents. They live on a lost continent of DNA. Like Atlantis, all record of them is sunk. They are guesswork, speculation, mythology. The only proof I have of them is myself. And what proof is that so many times written over? Written on the body is a secret code only visible in certain lights. I do not know the time of my birth. I'm not entirely sure of the date. Having brought no world with me, I made one. Spin the globe. What land masses are these, unmapped, unnamed? The world evolves, first liquid and alive, and then transforming, burning plates that must cool and set. The experiment is haphazard, toxic at times. Earth is a brinksmanship of breathtaking beauty and mutant inferno. My own primitive life forms take a long time to web intelligence. When they are intelligent, they are still angry. For me, still, now, anger is deeper than forgiveness. My red hot monsters aren't extinct. I've kept their Jurassic forest hidden but complete. They're still there, jawed, plated, furious. The sky is purple-brown. I am, of course, Homo sapiens, at least on paper. Spin the globe. If oxygen falls below 15% of air volume, I can hardly move. If it rises above 25%, I and my whole world conflagrate. Homeostasis of my planet is hard work. I swing between one extreme and another, constantly threatening my stability. I am always in danger of self-destruction. Breathe in. Breathe out. Oxygen is carcinogenic and likely puts a limit on our lifespan. It would be unwise, though, to try to extend life by not breathing at all. Which one of us doesn't do it? Either we loll in anaerobic stupor, too afraid to fill our lungs with risky beauty, or we roll out fire like dragons, destroying the world we love. I try not to burn up my world with rage. It's so hard. I spin the globe. When I made it, it was small as a ball. I carried it on a stick over my shoulder. I was the fool, new and careless. I didn't know that worlds are on the Planck scale, infinitesimally tiny, exploding to grow. It grew. It utilized free energy from the sun. It learned to break the oxygen carbon compounds. It started a life of its own. I used my world like a crystal ball, gazing into it, looking for cues. I loved its independence, the unknowingness of it. But like everything you birth, it gradually becomes too big to carry. It's on my back now, vast and expanding. I hardly recognize it. I love it. I hate it. It's not me. It's itself. Where am I in the world that I have made? Where in the world am I? About 5 billion years ago, the material that now makes up the sun and planets was a great cloud of dust called the solar nebula. The material that was a mixture of light elements like hydrogen and helium, along with heavier elements thrown out by an earlier generation of brief stars. A shockwave or an exploding star prompted the nebula to condense into a galaxy of protostars. In one of these protostars, material concentrated to form the proto-sun. Gas and dust around it collected into a flat, rotating disk. Over the next 1,000 years or so, the disk cooled and the grains of solid matter began to freeze. In the hot inner region, there were silicate rocks. Further out, there was watery ice, and further out yet, frozen methane. These grains molded themselves into mile-long lumps, bumping, breaking, colliding, but sometimes cooperating to form the planets. The 4 planets closest to the sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Earth, are small rocky worlds. The next 4 planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are gas giants. Pluto is more like a moon than a planet. There is no life except here, planet Earth, the almost, the proto, the maybe. Planet Earth wanted life so badly that she got it. Beside me, the lamp still glows. Here I am, turning and turning the lit up globe, leaning on the limits of myself. What limits? There are none. The story moves at the speed of light, and like light, the story is curved. There are no straight lines. The lines that smooth across the page deceive. Straightforward is not the geometry of space. In space, nothing tends directly. Matter and matter of fact both warp under light. If only I understood that the globe itself, complete, perfect, unique, is a story. Science is a story. History is a story. These are the stories we tell ourselves to make ourselves come true. What am I? Atoms. What are atoms? Empty space and points of light. What is the speed of light? 300,000 kilometers per second. What is a second? That depends on where in the universe you set your watch. Let me crawl out from under this world that I have made. It doesn't need me anymore. Strangely, I don't need it either. I don't need the weight. Let it go. There are reservations and regrets, but let it go. I want to tell the story again. I want to tell the story again. Long ago, the violent planet of radioactive rock had learned to become home. Atlas had loved the earth, the crumble of soil between his fingers, the budding of spring, the slow fruit of autumn. Change. Now the earth changed, but Atlas had stayed still, feeling the tilted axis rotating against his shoulder blades. All his strength was focused on holding up the world. He hardly knew what movement was anymore. No matter that he shifted slightly for comfort, the monstrous weight decided everything. Why? Why not just put it down? Atlas let his hands go from the sides of the world. Nothing happened. Atlas put his hands down in front of him on the floor of the universe or the ceiling of stars, I don't know which, And then he stretched out his left leg so that he was kneeling on all fours, the cosmos balanced on his back. Laika was running in and out of his spread fingers. She had never seen her master move. Atlas crawled forward and then suddenly fell flat on his face with his hands over his ears and the dog clinging onto his thumb. Atlas waited, rigid with doom. The dog waited, her nose in her paws. Nothing happened. Write it more substantially. Nothing. Atlas raised his head, turned over, stood up, stepped back. The dog's nose lifted. Atlas looked back at his burden. There was no burden. There was only the diamond blue earth, gardened in a wilderness of space. All that we can see is only a fraction of the universe. Some matter is detectable only by its gravitational effects on the rotation of galaxies. This is called dark matter, and no one knows its composition. Dark matter could be conventional matter, like the small stars called brown dwarfs, or it could even be black holes. Or it could be Atlas holding up the universe. But I like to think it is Atlas and Laika walking away.
Holy shit. I really like those closing lines.
I know, it's such a beautiful ending.
Oh my god. That whole last passage that we caught was so beautiful. That bit where it was like talking about how two things that each child has to disprove are its mother and its father, and about if you believe completely in the myth of them, then you don't get to believe in the myth of you.
Yeah.
That's some real shit.
Yeah, fucking hell.
I really like that. That was so good.
I'm glad.
Oh, and now I can go to my parents for dinner and tell them all about that part.
You'll be like, you guys don't exist anymore. Deal with it.
By the way, thanks for the tacos.
Awesome.
Man.
Sounds like a good approach. Here, parents, have a book.
I'm really glad that you missed out the bits that you missed out, because they sound heavy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I made them less heavy, but yeah, I don't know. I think I've read this book a number of times, and every time I get to the point where Atlas picks the Sputnik out of the air and Laika crawls up on his neck, I'm just bawling by that point. And I think that has less of an effect after. So you know how last night ended on the Jeanette Winterston's own voice talking about her life, and then Atlas talking about Mars, and then there's this big serious raping murdering Heracles chapter, and then it's just such a relief, I guess, to be like it's okay. And I don't think that relief, I think possibly the way I split it and not reading that chapter made the relief less, which, there were fewer tears than I was expecting. That's probably a good thing.
Oh, it hit me right in the heart still, though.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, that was a really good reading. Yeah.
Huh?
Just thank you for reading. That was a beautiful choice and also beautifully read.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. And I appreciated it being somewhat heavier than a lot of our usual content. It's okay to have that kind of a change in vibe,
I'm glad. I was a little bit worried, but I really thought that you guys would like it. So
I mean, if you're gonna read heavy content or experience heavy media, might as well do it with friends to have feelings.
It's true. Oh. This is from a series of rewritten myths, and Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad is from it too. and that is also worthwhile. It's
Well,
also short.
if you ever feel like reading it at some point, let us know.
Sure. I read the beginning of it during the epic poetry one, like the first chapter, but it's also, given mythology, it's like, do a feminist retelling of mythology and they don't run around, they don't hide the raping bits.
Yeah.
Or like, there's none of this like, oh yeah, they got carried off.
Yep.
So I haven't read the Margaret Atwood one recently, and I'm not sure how I feel like this one I remember being like more in that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Margaret Atwood is, especially since it's about Penelope and the whole war thing. But
Well, if you reread it and decide you want to,
I'll
let
reread
us
it.
know.
I'll read it, and if it's not terrible, I'll read it for y'all.
Oh, and next week on Story Time, they are currently off screen, but Bracken is going to be reading us some of the sequel of what was the first one? A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue.
Vice and Virtue.
Yes. So it will be A Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy next week.
How
So, yeah.
exciting!
Be ready for some. Apparently, I think there was some gruesome medical stuff at the start when Frankie did a bit of a reading, and also wonderful female friendships, from what I've been told.
Yay!
It's just like my life. Gruesome medical stuff and wonderful females.
Yeah, Bracken, I'm plugging you.
Oh, what are you saying?
I'm plugging you for Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. That I remember at the start of Frankie reading, there was gruesome medical details, and from what you said, also some wholesome female friendships.
There are some amazing female friendships and just like the depth of relationships between women, and also like women scientists in history.
Yay!
Yeah, so cool. You guys.
Pirates.
Pirates. Petticoats. There are petticoats. It's not just
They help to give your skirts the right shape.
Yeah, exactly. It's no false advertising here. There are petticoats and there is also piracy.
It's a good combination.
Yeah.
Petticoats have lots of space for pockets.
Imagine the amount of gilded detailing that could actually secretly just be a sword hilt that you could pull out of your petticoat at a random moment.
There's so much padding there. You can hide anything down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why all pirates don't wear big skirts.
I mean, I think they'd be impractical to fight him, but otherwise.
I mean, there's that. Also probably warm on the high seas. On the warm bits of the high seas.
Yeah,
not up here in Scotland. You want to be warm.
I feel like falling overboard in a petticoat might be a little bit more complicated to try to get out of.
Yeah.
All right. Fuck practicality. Let's all get petticoats.
Yeah, let's do it. And sail around on big boats.
Oh, that sounds really nice. I'd like a boat.
Boats. I'm enjoying seeing Carmen walking around in places.
Yeah, I accidentally took a
Robot Carmen.
little short nap. My body really want to struggle to.
Sorry, what was that, Carmen?
Your internet connection's kind of.
It's so
I think still
Because
no internet.
well, so summery. It's so weird to be out after 9.
Ah, yeah, it is nice.
Oh, my signal is really bad, I think, because I'm moving.
Oh well.
Yeah. Is it about time to say goodbye to the catch-up crew?
Probably. It's time. Goodbye, catch up crew.
Bye, Ketchup Crew.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Remember, your first parent was a star.
Bye bye.
Bye.